WATD presents John Paul, the Car Doctor. All things automotive. Have questions? Call 781-837-4900. Now, here's John Paul, the Car Doctor.
And good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD. I guess this is our first new program of the year.
I think
I guess
that's
so,
about right. Yeah, we did New Year's Eve last week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so welcome to 2024. We're here answering your car questions and talking about car stuff. But before we do that, we have from Ford Motor Company Jennifer Brace, and Jennifer is Ford's Chief Futurist. And Jennifer, what's a futurist?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. So what I do is I spend a lot of time paying attention to what's happening in the world, looking at trends, looking at things often well outside of automotive to help internal teams consider the environment we'll have to operate within moving forward. So often what I say is, we're helping teams think about a future that feels unpredictable by helping them prepare for multiple versions of what might happen. But at the end of the day, my whole job is to pay attention to the things that I think other people might not be paying a lot of attention to, and then get teams to think about how they might react to that or be better prepared moving forward in the future.
Can you give us an example of something that you maybe looked at that became something real relative at Ford Motor Company that, that I guess really secured your job in one way?
Sure. So, the interesting thing at Ford, we've had a department within Futuring for almost 20 years now. And what we've done is we have forced Ford to look at multiple scenarios of what the future might hold. And if we go back many years, as early as 2004, we were looking at different scenarios. And one of those included financial decline, what happens if there's a big bust, which of course did happen with the financial crisis in 2008. I will say that was one of four scenarios that we looked at when we asked teams to consider different futures. But I would say that was a big win, the fact that we had teams thinking about that well in advance of it happening so that we had a plan. So even if teams say, I don't really know if that's what's going to happen, we say, that's okay, but let's have a plan in place just in case. Let's force them to think through different futures so that they are prepared. Instead of trying to predict, we ask them to be prepared for multiple versions.
Can I call you next time I make a stupid move with my 401k, maybe before I do that?
Yeah, I love that. I've had people ask me, so how do you invest? It feels like you guys would be great investors. And I say, doesn't it though? Doesn't it feel like we would be? And I can't proclaim to being that great at it at the stock market.
Well, part of the thing is that, and I think COVID really affected this a lot, is people have been working at home a lot more. Some offices, our office for instance, is kind of a hybrid now, sort of going into the office a couple days a week. At your position at Ford, how have you looked at lifestyle changes and what people are willing to maybe accept or push back on when it comes to how they conduct their day, I guess?
Yeah, so COVID, of course, has had a lasting impact on a lot of different elements of our lives. And so we do an annual trend survey. This is the 12th year that we have been doing it, and we just put the data out. You can find it at FordTrends.com. But one of the interesting things that we've seen in prior years, we've seen a lot of, people being concerned about feeling overwhelmed about the changes taking place, very much related to COVID. However, not solely because of COVID, because we've been feeling that way for quite a while. But we do continue to see things like feelings of overwhelm, feelings of anxiety, mental stress kind of continuing to increase, especially in younger generations. And what we saw this year in the survey was people are saying, you know what, there's a lot of there's lack of stability around me, and I recognize that. It's almost like an acceptance of it. And by saying that I see that this is happening, so what I'm going to do in response to that is I'm going to focus on prioritizing myself. And that's what we saw loud and clear this year, is that people wanted to put themselves first. They wanted to prioritize relationships with others. They wanted to even prioritize taking care of themselves over a promotion at work, for example. So often bringing into question kind of our traditional markers of success and things that that in the past we would have said, of course they're going to be going for that. People have said, a more stressful job just isn't worth it. So those are, to me, that was a surprise. One of the big surprises in the numbers was we asked people if they would be willing to take a 20% pay cut in order to increase their quality of life. And 20%, of course, is not a small number when we talk about a pay cut. 52% of employed people across the world said that they would do it. 52%. It's huge.
That is huge. I don't know that I would do that, but
yeah. Well, and I'll be honest with you. When we asked the question, there was a lot of internal debate on the team, like how we would want to ask the question and how big should the pay cut be. And I'll be honest, we were not anticipating that number of people to say that yes, they would be willing to do that to increase their quality of life. But I think it does go back to, as you were saying, people have. Some of their perspective has shifted throughout COVID, and what their expectations are, how they want to set up their life, and what they're willing to do. Is we're seeing changes. We're seeing more demands, particularly from younger generations, saying that it's not worth it.
And I remember back, it was probably a dozen years ago now, it was either the New York or Detroit Auto Show. Bill Ford was there, and he said, Ford Motor Company is not necessarily a car manufacturer anymore. We're a technology company. And is that part of what all of this, looking towards the future and asking these questions, is that all part of what is shaping kind of the new Ford?
So certainly, you can't get away from it, right? Technology is part of everything that we do, and including when we looked at our survey this year, we knew we had to ask a lot of questions about AI. Generative AI has, become a common household term, quite frankly. So we did ask quite a few questions about AI and how people felt about it, what it meant in their lives, what would they trust it to do for them, and we saw a lot of tension there, quite frankly. This idea that people expect it to continue to grow in importance in their life, but they're also afraid of it. The 50% of people said that they're not, they don't really understand what it is. They're afraid of it. So we understand. So people are basically saying, hey, I know this is a thing. I expect it to continue to grow in my life. I might even already be trusting it to make decisions like planning my vacation or making small purchases, even giving me mental health or physical health advice. But we also see them saying, I'm not so sure I'm trusting of it. We also saw some tension in how people viewed it in terms of the impact on jobs. So this is one that I thought was really interesting when we asked people, do you think AI is going to cause job loss for others? And 68% of people globally agreed. So about two-thirds said, yep, I think it's going to cause job loss for others. And then we asked if it would cause job loss for them. And then we saw the numbers drop to 39%. This idea that it's going to happen to other people, not to me, is particularly interesting, right? There might be some, some of that, it's never going to happen to me, that perspective, which...
I'm too important. It can't happen to me.
Yeah, exactly. But everyone else should watch out. So I always find data like that is particularly interesting, right? Especially when people say that they don't really understand it or they're afraid of it, but then they're worried about it for other people more than themselves. So I think that story will continue to unfold. Certainly within the company, we talk about technology all the time, in how it can come into the vehicle, how it can make people's lives better, how it can help us make safer choices, how it can help enhance our experience. So it is still a very big part of the way that we are developing and designing. But I also think with this understanding that people are somewhat wary of it, especially if you use a broad term like AI, is making sure that we are being as transparent and clear in how we're using it and how it's benefiting them.
So, for instance, if in the near future, if we do actually have some semi-autonomous or autonomous vehicles, you would want to be careful using artificial intelligence as a term that says how it works.
Yeah, honestly, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, you might want to look for other terminology, because the truth is there's AI being used in all kinds of aspects of our life. There's already smarts in lots of products that we use and lots of places that we are interacting, but I think people don't necessarily realize it. Every time that ad is just a little too spot on, every time your Google search is particularly attuned when you've only put in one or two letters, that's because of AI. That's because it's taking some of the data that you've already provided it, and it's making some predictions on what you need.
Now, you've talked about AI as an example, and I'm trying to think of other things that I don't know anything about, like cryptocurrency, for instance. I went by a business the other day that said it was a crypto bar, and basically I got curious. I'm like, what the hell is a crypto bar? So I stopped, and it was basically a different version of a shared office space. And it was a place where you would go and you'd set up, and you could either do crypto or you could do web design or whatever the case is, but you do it all within this, what they called a crypto bar. And I still went away going, I don't get it still. But do you even go like asking those kind of questions? Like, I don't know. Would you, do you understand crypto, and would you ever use crypto to go buy a car, for instance?
Yes, great question. We did not ask it this year, but we did ask it last year. Yeah, we did. We did ask about cryptocurrency. We decided usually if we've asked it recently, we don't bother repeating it for another couple of years. But certainly anything like that, especially when it's a new technology, we want to know how people are reacting to it. And for the most part, most people said that they don't understand crypto, and more importantly, they said that they didn't understand all the hype around it, which I thought was particularly poignant because it was before the fall of FTX. So it was before some of the crypto kind of implosions that happened. So I thought there was some interesting timing on it last year with the way that the data was kind of shaping up. But I love that you pull that out as an example, because those are the things that both myself and my team will look at that might surprise some people from an automotive company, right? Like, why do you care about crypto? But you made a great connection there in saying, oh, well, should we be considering it for purchasing vehicles or something? Is this going to be a new currency? But that is a lot of what we do, is kind of paying attention to all the things outside of automotive that might come back and impact our business or the environment that we're operating within, that might have some impact on how consumers are acting and how their behaviors and values might be shifting.
Yeah, I suppose, I guess you can't be a car company and live in a bubble. I remember talking to one of your designers, Jay Mays, and we were just chatting one day, and he said, well, I spend time, I walk through Target to see what new colors are popular and, what new little appliances seem to be good, and I take that information back, and it works into car design somehow. And I kind of said, well, I don't do that at Target, but it's good that you do that, and the idea that you take a line off of an appliance or something, and go, that line could also serve as an arch for a wheel opening, or however designers think is always amazing. But when you look at all of these things, whether it's you pointed out that people are willing to take a 20% pay cut to live a better personal life, does that also go into the car in such a way that maybe that car interior becomes, and another car company did it years ago, became your own little sanctuary, but it could also be, okay, you're going to take a cut and pay to become a better, more relaxed person. Do it in the car.
You got it exactly. So we'll look at something like that, and we might share data like that with our HR department and say, hey, let's keep this in mind. People think it's really important. Might it change maybe the benefits packages we're offering? Or yes, we would take it to a product team and we would say, hey, let's think about what's the driver behind this. And we would of course want to try to understand what is it that people want, what does quality of life mean to them. And that you're absolutely right. Does it mean that the vehicle can now serve as this? Do they want more relaxation, more time to escape? And what we saw was people wanted more time to connect with others in person. They wanted more time outdoors. They wanted to prioritize the relationships within their lives. So we would take that type of data, and then we would work with a product development team, and we would do some ideation around what might this mean, how might that manifest in a car. Sanctuary is a perfect example. This is something that we've pushed pretty hard with our Lincoln brand in terms of making that this escape pod, if you will, this place that you go for relaxation. And absolutely this data fits into that. If we understand that people need more breaks, and often it's just a mini break. They just need a term that we use on the team is joy snacks. You need little joy snacks throughout the day. So how can you create sometimes those micro moments and understanding that people are busy and they're, bouncing around all over the place? How can the vehicle serve as an opportunity there when we need a little joy snack or an escape, even if it's only for 5 minutes?
Yeah, this is sort of a fascinating conversation, and the idea that I guess when I originally thought of a futurist at an automobile company, I'm thinking, well, you're designing flying cars or something, and or autonomous vehicles or whatever, but not really looking at all of the aspects that people look at. And I guess it really comes back to you have to be people focused to be able to build good stuff.
Absolutely. You're spot on. Understanding where people are at, what's going to resonate with them, what's important to them outside of the vehicle can give us some clues into how do we set up that vehicle to help meet their needs.
And I suppose that's the tricky part, because you might come up with an idea that based on a bunch of factors, you throw it together, and engineering and design gets in there, they build something beautiful, and then the next year people change their mind and they're like, but it took us 3 years to build it. Yeah, now it's not going to work.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's part of, and so when I talked earlier too about futuring and looking at different futures and what we would call scenarios, that's another kind of thing that we do. So after we come up with an idea, looking at the trends that we're seeing today, we say, okay, let's stress test it. Let's put this, now that we have a new idea for a car, for example, let's put it in maybe, 3 or 4 different future scenarios or environments. And let's stress test it. Let's figure out where are the holes, where are the blind spots, what haven't we thought of, or do we have a product that feels like it would be successful in any of those environments? And when we do that, we're really pushing on things that are outside of our control. So, for example, the economic condition of the country would be outside of our control, but certainly would have an impact on the way consumers view products and the way that they spend their money, right? So if times are really good, we're going to get, one set of features that might be really possible, or, that might be well received and have more success versus, if people feel uncertain about their financial future. So when we think of things like that, what we'll do is after we have an idea, we will put it into these different futures in hopes that it does give us a more, I don't love the term, but sometimes people will call it like a future-proof strategy, because what we want to do is we want to consider how it might be different, how it might look different, and more importantly, how do we change if some of those signals that we see along the way are starting to tell us that our plan is no longer going to be the right one.
Well, and I guess that also means it's okay to make mistakes, right?
Absolutely. So that is so important, right? Because what I tell teams is I know that you can't have 4 different strategies moving forward. We don't have the bandwidth or the money to be able to follow 4 different paths. But what we can do, if we pick one path and then we start paying attention to what I would call like the signposts or the signals along the way that tell us that path is still the happy path, if you will, for success for this product. If we start laying those out years in advance, it gives us the opportunity to react earlier. So if we say we've planned, for example, for a positive economic scenario, but when we do that, we say, okay, here's some markers of things that would tell us we need to reevaluate our plan. It could be a drop in the stock market and, things like that. But what we can do is set up what we call signposts that force us to go back and look at that plan and say, okay, we saw these signposts coming up. We saw this dip in the market happen. Let's reevaluate the plan. So it gives us like checkpoints along the way, and then we're inevitably going to make mistakes if we're trying to plan 5 or 10 years out. So there's a recognition, and there needs to be an acceptance that we need to be able to pivot. We need to be able to adjust as conditions change. But the great thing is, if you've spent some time doing forecasting and futuring, you can likely already have those plans in place, and you're ready to implement as soon as you start to see those signals. So you've got a leg up on number one. You know what you're looking for things that might come back and negatively impact your plan. And then you've already thought through what would plan B be. So you've already got that plan in the back of your pocket on how might we pivot if we need to.
And I guess like all companies, you probably have a plan 10 years ahead, or and I remember years back I read about a Japanese electronics company. They had 1,000-year plan. And I was like, how do you have a 1,000-year plan?
My guess is however they have it written out, whatever technology is being saved on will not be readable.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. It's sort of like I think the and I always have the name wrong, but it's like the Museum of Sound in DC. They were trying to figure out where to put when the astronaut said, one small step for man and all that stuff, what kind of media do we put that on? And they finally decided to put it on essentially records. And somebody said, records? Why are you putting it on records? And they said, well, because, cassette tapes are gone, DVDs are gone, flash drives will be gone at some point. But a record, you can play a record with basically a cone, a pin, and a stick. And you can get sound out of it still. So in a million years, somebody's going to still figure out how to get sound out of a record where they're not going to be able to do it with maybe a flash drive or something. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. And
exactly, throwback.
Yeah. So I guess when you look at these things, and someone once told me that there's no better way to be called a false prophet than put an actual date on something. So when you're looking at trends, do you ever put dates on it? Do you ever say that in the year 2027 there'll be no red cars because everybody's going to hate red in 2027?
So we try to avoid that as much as possible. We always say that we don't predict, we prepare.
Yep.
Teams for the future. That being said, if we are doing scenarios, we do tend to put a year on it because otherwise people struggle to wrap their head around it. And it helps us to project out, like, what is 3 years from now? How is that different than 5 or 10 years from now? But the truth is, what we tell teams is, even when there is a year on it, we ask them, do not get hung up on that number, because some of this stuff will happen sooner, some of it will happen later, some of it will not happen at all. So while we do put a number on it, we always say it is not a prediction. What we're asking you to do is kind of a bit of a thought exercise, like a strategic planning exercise, to go through and think through, if this were the world of 2030, for example, how do the plans that you have in place today stand up against that world? Because in auto, right, we're designing years in advance, and then we also know our products are going to be on the road for 10 plus years. So we have to be considering a pretty broad range of time when it comes to, the day that we're designing it versus how long it's going to be out in the public.
Yeah, really good point. I guess that kind of goes into last week we heard from Andrew Frick at Ford and talked about how the F-Series trucks are again just killing it when it comes to sales. Yep. And like you pointed out, somebody's going to keep a truck on the road for a long time, and it's got to work for them and be able to do this. If people want to get more information about all the trends, you mentioned the website. Can you mention it again?
Sure, it's FordTrends.com.
Okay, Jennifer, I want to thank
you. See this year's data, and you can manipulate it and play with it. If you're a data nerd like myself, you can look at it for different countries or age groups. So if you like playing with data, check it out.
Check it out. All right. Jennifer, I want to thank you for taking a little time out of your Sunday morning and joining us up here in what is going to be snowy Massachusetts.
Well, it's my pleasure. We've got some snow here in Detroit right now, too. So we're We'll all put on our snow gloves and go play.
Yeah. There you go. And where people probably in the future, people are still going to play in the snow, right?
Oh, heck yeah, they better be.
All right. Jennifer, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Jennifer Brace. She is Ford's Chief Futurist, and we need to take a break and pay some bills. My name's John Paul. This is a Car Doctor program, and if you would like to give us a call, our phone number is 781-837-4900. We'll be right back.
AAA is with you at every moment in your life. They have 24-hour-7 roadside assistance, which covers you in any car you're driving or riding in, even a rental or your friend's wheels. They have great member rates on home and auto insurance, savings on travel, hotels, and rental cars, and discounts on hundreds of your favorite brands. You're covered on and off the road. Learn more at aaa.com/join.
Talk radio with a South Shore point of view. Hi, I'm Kevin Tachi. Join me tomorrow for Monday Night Talk, where the South Shore comes to talk. Tomorrow night after the 6 o'clock news here on 95.9 WATD.
Make an appointment Sunday morning at 11 for John Paul, the Car Doctor, on 95.9 WATD. Now, back to the Car Doctor.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD. Our phone number is 781-837-4900 if you'd like to talk to us about your car problems. Maybe, who knows what you have on your mind. Give us a call at 781-837-4900 like Tom is doing right now. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, and so far it still is a good morning. There's no snow on the ground.
No?
No, not at all. But that's what my call's kind of going around. Now, on our small engine things, snow blowers, this and that. So if you go over to a Lowe's or something like that, I was in there, and they have the canned fuel, right?
Yep.
And you can get it without any ethanol. Now, is that better to use? It's expensive, but do you think it's going to save on problems? Oh,
the point I mean, that's the point, because ethanol sucks up moisture. It's alcohol just absorbs moisture. That's why gasoline antifreeze is alcohol, because if you think you have water in your tank, you put in gasoline antifreeze, and the isopropyl or methanol, I think one of those two, sucks up the water that's in the fuel and either the whole batch mixes with the fuel or separates it out. Either way, but that's how it gets the water out of your gas tank. So if you get alcohol-free fuel, you'll get fuel with no alcohol in it, which tends not to pick up moisture, which in theory should cause less issues with carburetors and fuel lines and things like that. When ethanol, I'm going to back up a ways here. Way back when, I'm even going to go way back in the 60s, I guess.
No, not too far for me.
Yeah, well, but if you had an outboard motor, you tried to find white fuel, which was basically exactly, and that's what you would use. That's what you would use in your outboard motor, because it didn't have lead in it, I guess, or something. It didn't have something in it. Yeah, where everything had where everything had lead in it, and then.
Right.
And then, we went to catalytic converters and unleaded gas, and to make the air cleaner, we added something called methyl tertiary butyl ether, MBTE, which was a great product. It raised octane, it made the air cleaner, but if you spilled it on the ground, it would contaminate wells for like 150 miles away from wherever you spilled it. So it sounded like a really good idea unless it got into the groundwater, and then it screwed up groundwater forever. So then they went to ethanol, and people said, "Oh, this ethanol gas is evil." What people didn't really realize was, and you mentioned Getty gasoline has been using ethanol for forever. They never used MTBE; they only used ethanol, and people didn't seem to have a problem because they didn't know any better. And then what happened was, in the marine industry, people were using ethanol fuel, and ethanol and fiberglass didn't go real well together. So the other part is, especially things like especially things like boats, the gas tanks would get dirty and sludgy because no one ever really drains a gas tank in a boat because where do you put the gas? And the ethanol is a good cleaner, better than just straight gasoline, so it would wash some of the sludge away. And people were changing fuel filters after fuel filters and they were saying it's this damn ethanol in the gas. It really wasn't. It was really the crap that was in the gas tank that was getting washed away because of the ethanol. So it really wasn't the ethanol's problem. What ethanol wasn't good with is old-time fuel lines. Ethanol gas would deteriorate the fuel lines, and every fuel line made in the last 10 years doesn't have that issue. But, people that had antique cars would say, I put it in and all the gas lines rotted away. Well, that's because they were old, and, it didn't go well with that. So people would go out and try to find ethanol-free gas, so they'd go to the airport, for instance, and they'd buy gasoline, they'd buy aviation fuel, which didn't have ethanol in it, or they'd buy aviation fuel that had lead in it, because you can still get leaded aviation fuel. So that was sort of the cheat around. So, back to your original question, should you spend $12 a gallon on true fuel that doesn't have ethanol in it?
Double that.
Or whatever it costs, I don't know. I mean, I worked with one guy who swore by it, but on the other hand, I just used, in everything I ever owned, every little lawnmower and snowblower, I just used regular old gasoline. But I would either put stable in it or, when it got near the end of the season, just run it out of gas and put some fresh gas.
That's really where my question is. Is it all right to store with that gas, and you wouldn't have to put an additive in it? That fuel, is that?
Yeah, because gasoline can still get stale, for want of a better word. So so once it gets
even
open,
that fuel, even stuff you pay the big money for,
even that, because it can still it evaporates still. So so, I mean, because when you put it into your snowblower, it still vents a little bit, so air gets in, air gets out. There's always going to be a little bit of air in there, and that air is what causes the fuel to break down. So even that true fuel or whatever it is, that's the one I keep seeing. I've become sort of I don't know if I've become a YouTube addict or not, but
we all are.
But there's the Vice Grip Garage guy. Who does these, he finds these cars that have been sitting for 25 years somewhere, and it's actually kind of entertaining. He goes and he finds this, pick something, 1980 LTD that's been sitting there forever, and it hasn't moved in 30 years, and he goes and he at least in video, and he does most of all the video with his phone, he gets the car going, usually puts some tires on it or something, and then he drives it back home, which could be 100, 200, or it could be, 1,000 miles home. And but he always uses this true fuel stuff, especially on some of these old engines that haven't started in a while. And he gets the 50-to-1 premix because he's like, well, the extra oil in the premix fuel is good for the engine that hasn't cranked over in a really long time. And that sort of actually makes some sense. So so I guess I always think of, when I think of that stuff, I always think of True Fuel just because I keep watching this guy trying to resurrect these old cars. But he's also a pretty talented mechanic too. At the same time, to get these old things running, and most of the time he seems to make it home. Not all the time though, but most of the time. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So.
We went way back, but we can go back. Let's even go back further. Remember the old pumps used to have like the woman's name Ethel and all that stuff on them. Do you remember, like in the 40s, if you've ever seen an old pump, it would have like Ethel.
Yeah, and I think and I don't know enough, but I want to say Ethel was like the premium, wasn't it?
That's what I can't remember, but I remember seeing that on old pumps. Those names, and I didn't know. I was too young to buy gas.
Well, let's see. It says I just asked the Google machine here, and it says ethyl leaded gasoline is the confusing brand name choice for tetraethyl lead, which was an anti-knock octane boosting gasoline additive discovered by General Motors in 1921 and introduced commercially in 1923. So ethyl was sort of premium, I guess. So
okay, that's
so,
why you would see it. With that, and you would buy
because
that brand ethyl.
High tech. Because it was because it would boost the octane. So you so if you had the high compression Cadillac, you would go in and say, to the guy with the bow tie and the paper hat, fill it up with ethyl.
Right.
Yeah. So
exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Same. Yeah.
Well, that was a deep explanation, John.
I guess it was.
Yeah, I don't know if you don't have another question. I can hang up if not. I'm hearing, electric cars. They almost, like I had a neighbor who had one. I didn't know it, but every time I would hear something, it sounded to me. Initially, I said, "Oh boy, she's got a bad alternator." You get some whine from it, like, for the longest time. And then I've noticed that on several cars. I'd be in a Stop and Shop, and I come out and I hear this whining. And they're electric cars, or is that a hybrid? I don't know, but it's kind of annoying to me.
Well, that's because you can see. That's the idea behind that noise, and it stops at about 19 miles an hour, is because it's for people who are visually impaired. So they can hear the car coming, because electric cars are so quiet. That's sort of the reason behind it is they make that weird sound, that weird spaceship sound, because they don't want to run people over, I guess. So.
But they all don't do it, though. I don't think all manufacturers, because I've heard other cars and they didn't sound like that. But do they now, or is that?
Yeah. That is standard now, because they require whoever requires stuff, NHTSA or somebody says, oh, now you have to do that. So.
Okay.
Hey,
all right. Thank you.
All right,
John.
All right.
Are you shoveling or not? Are you in warmth?
Well, I'm where it should be warm, but I have to tell you, I've been here for 8 weeks now, and I have seen the whoever called it the Sunshine State lied, because it has been more cloudy and overcast and rainy than it's right now. I guess it sounds good, but right now it is cloudy, overcast, and about 61 degrees. So.
Wow!
But on the other hand, I haven't worn socks since I got here. So
there you go. All right, John,
all right.
Have a great day.
All right,
yeah,
all right.
You.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Our phone number again, 781-837-4900. If you have a question, I'll try to make the answer shorter than that one, maybe. Jesse, was that a little too long? Was that a little too long an answer?
No, it was perfect.
No,
we have Robert from Tingsboro.
All right. Well, let's see if we can do a shorter answer, maybe. Robert, good morning.
Good morning. It's been a while, John. And
I know it has.
Well,
Happy New Year.
Yes, I was going to say Happy New Year, Merry Christmas to you and your family.
You as well.
Yeah, I go to church at 11 on Sunday. Today with 10 or 12 inches of snow, no church, so I say I take it.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, I do have a kind of an update on the Maverick.
Okay.
Mechanically, it's been fine, but I told the dealer when I made the appointment, it's possessed. It's got all these glitches. Like the first one that started was side view mirror element, heating element. It will come on. It comes on when you start the truck up. You can shut it off or wait 10 minutes.
Yep.
The next thing that started was the delay for the rear camera. I usually go into the settings and have it delayed, 10, 12 seconds, whatever it is. And that shuts itself off on occasion. The real weird thing, when the radio is off, I start the truck up. The radio comes on by itself. I didn't start it.
Okay.
And it goes from the XM station that I'm on to an AM. And then the final possession, the driver's door will lock without me locking it. The other three don't. So I've got those four bizarre things. And if you don't have the key in your pocket, the proximity sensor doesn't work. So I have to use the keypad on the B pillar to unlock that door. The truck's running fine as far as your normal mechanical issues, but all these electronic things that, I've never been a fan of, and, they stuff them to you.
Yeah, and I'm just, I don't have every technical service bulletin that, Ford puts out, but I just looked real quick on Ford Maverick technical service bulletins, and there is, apparently the sync system, which runs everything in that car, basically, has been, it says various sync symptoms, sync screen flickers, echoes, robotic voice, slow lag, bad Bluetooth pairing. I mean, there's like a million little things that seem to pop up with, no remote start, not able to be scheduled, through the app, and climate control features missing after an update. So it sounds like there's a whole bunch of stuff that maybe, with whatever the latest sync update might fix some of this glitchy stuff.
They're going to have to, maybe replay. Yeah, it is Sync 3, this system, not Sync 4 like most of the other models. So,
and this is specific to Sync 3. It says there's some new update, and like I said, I don't get the latest ones because I just don't. But this one was from October, and it says update for this, and it's kind of funny. This updated one from a little bit previous to this, and that one apparently had the incorrect procedure listed with it, which would cause more stuff to happen. So,
it's more of a nuisance. Everything, everything works. Just it seems to work when I want it to be on. It shuts off, and when I want it to shut off, it's on. So
and one of the things is like unresponsive touchscreen, for instance, or inoperative infotainment applications. That would be when you're it switches from XM to AM or something. So it's unfortunately, when you cram all kinds of technology into a vehicle, sometimes, it's like, I turned, I started at about 8 this morning. I turned my computer on to write newspaper columns, and all of a sudden my computer started just flashing for no reason. And it's like, what the heck? And I'm hoping that, it didn't lose what I was working on at the same time. And I'm like, what is going on? And, and the fix is, unfortunately, shut it off, turn it back on, and magically fixes itself. And kind of the same thing with your truck, I guess. Is sometimes you just shut it off, you restart it, and everything seems fine for, a week or more, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, why doesn't XM work when I have my phone connected or something? Why doesn't XM work the way it's supposed to? And what does one have to do with the other? Well, it all runs through the computer bus that connects everything together, and I guess signals get goofy. I don't know.
Yeah. Typical electronics, they say.
Go
back to the old days.
Well, I mean, I don't know that how many people still want to wind down a window by hand anymore.
Oh no, I'm good with the power windows. Those work pretty reliably.
Yeah. But you're right, and as much as I like, for instance, the premium Hyundai line Genesis, some of their electronics are pretty glitchy in their new vehicles, and they seem to update them quite a bit. So I don't know.
Well, it's been good talking to you, John.
All right.
I'm not sure when the next time will be, but
well, take it easy with 12 inches of snow out there.
Yeah, I've got most of it picked up. It's still a few more inches to go, but yeah.
Is it light and fluffy or heavy and wet?
Yeah, most of it is here. It started out a little wet, maybe an inch and a half was wet, but the rest is pretty powdery in this area. But
that's good.
But we did lose power for a while, and it's back. So.
Well, not a good day to lose power. So
no.
All right.
Okay, John.
All right. Take care of yourself. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Why don't we take another break, pay some bills? If you would like to join us, 781-837-4900. When we come back, I got a bunch of questions in this week, and some of them are pretty interesting. And one, I want also, before we take the break, I want to comment, when the news was on, somebody said, up in upper state New York, four-wheel drive is needed because it's so slippery. Four-wheel drive doesn't help. I mean, it does. Four-wheel drive definitely helps. It gets you moving in the snow.
A little bit to get up my driveway, but
it's
kind of weird driving in four-wheel drive in my truck.
I mean, and people forget that four-wheel drive, when it's in four-wheel drive, you don't stop any different, and that's the slippery part. The get moving is one thing, but it's like if you're going 35 miles an hour and you got to jump on the brakes, four-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, they all stop the same. You're not going to stop any different. Good tires are important more than four-wheel drive, but that's just me. Why don't we take that break? My name's John Paul. This is the Car Doctor program. You're listening on 95.9 WATD. We'll be right back.
All right. When we come back, we have Tracy from Plymouth and then another John. John accidentally hung up on you. So if you could call us back, John. Nothing personal. I just have fat fingers and I press lots of buttons. All right.
All right, Tracy, stay right there. We'll be right back.
AAA is with you at every moment in your life. They have 24-hour 7 roadside assistance, which covers you in any car you're driving or riding in, even a rental or your friend's wheels. They have great member rates on home and auto insurance, savings on travel, hotels, and rental cars, and discounts on hundreds of your favorite brands. You're covered on and off the road. Learn more at aaa.com/join.
One-stop painting and renovating.
Since 1986, One Stop Painting has been true to its name. The one stop you need to make for all your interior and exterior painting needs. That's 1986, 38 years. Some of our customers today weren't even born when we were painting their moms and dads' homes. And painting isn't all we do. Sure, we can freshen up your house and add some new colors and washable finishes to the walls, but we can also do carpentry, such as adding crown molding or wainscoting, wall and plaster repairs, fix water and smoke damage. We can even help with insurance claims. For nearly 4 decades, we've taken on all projects, large and small, commercial and residential, and given you the same one-stop attention to detail no matter the size or price of the job. We are a family-run company responsible for over 30 employees. Your business helps us take care of their families while our employees take care of yours. Help keep them busy throughout the winter by taking advantage of some of our big seasonal discounts. Call us at 508-888-3500 or check us out online at onestoppainting.com.
One stop painting and renovating. You let that mountain reach high. You let that river run wide.
Hi, this is Jeff Nealon.
And this is Joe Clapp.
And I'm Stephen Davis.
We're Humble Roots. Tune into Twilight Showcase Radio.
Hosted by Sandy Stride and Keith James.
On 95.9 WATD and 95.9WATD.com.
And of course, visit twilightshowcase.org.
Twilight Showcase, tonight from 8 to 10 on 95.9 WATD. Make an appointment Sunday morning at 11 for John Paul, the Car Doctor, on 95.9 WATD. Now, back to the Car Doctor.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD. Let's go over to Tracy in Plymouth. Tracy, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
Yes, good. I have a question about my 2014 Nissan Juke Nismo.
Okay.
When I turn a corner or make a turn, it makes scraping and squeaking noises. Ooh. And I don't know what I should do. It's from the front of the car that I'm hearing this.
And does it change at all with like temperature or anything like that?
Nope. Stays the same. It started about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That I noticed it might have been longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that there's either an issue with a beginning of a brake problem. How many miles are on this? It's almost 10 years old now, right?
Yeah, it's under 100,000.
Yeah.
I was thinking brakes myself. I know that I've had problems in previous vehicles with brakes, but I never had that kind of sound.
Yeah, I mean, the other possibility is there's a wheel bearing that's starting to fail. And when you turn, it puts pressure on the bearing, and the bearing's the part that allows the wheel to spin nice and free. And when if that bearing's starting to fail, it can cause a noise. It can cause a squeak. It can cause a crunching sound. It can do a bunch of different things. So that's it. So I guess the best thing to do at this point is to go someplace where you can have somebody take it for a road test and see what's really going on, but also as importantly is to make sure it's not dangerous too, because if it is a bad wheel bearing or bad brakes for that matter, and brakes can wear unevenly, so you might be starting to hear the beginning of the brakes starting to wear out, and a quick look at brakes might go, oh, they look okay, but you find out that there's an inside and outside brake pad. Maybe the inside brake pad's starting to wear really quick because something's starting to stick a little bit. So it can be a combination of things, but right now I'd want you to get it into a mechanic where they can take it for a ride, and ideally if they could take it for a ride with you, so you can say, no, this is the noise I'm hearing. Hear it now? So they know exactly what you're talking about. That would be the best thing.
That's perfect. That is perfect advice. John, thank you so much for answering my questions, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful new year.
Happy New Year to you, too. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Let's go over to John in Norwood. John, good morning.
Morning, John. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Hey, I started hearing a noise from the serpentine belt of my 99 Maxima about a year ago. And so I took a guess, and I just replaced that idler pulley and bracket. Mm-hmm. But it didn't seem to fix the noise. It was just kind of an occasional groan, kind of sounded like, I don't know, maybe a bearing going or something. So a year later, the noise is getting worse, it seems like. And so I take it to my mechanic. He replaces the idler pulley. I still hear the noise, and I think the replacement that I had done, when he showed it to me, he thought it was, pretty banged up. So he thought maybe water got in there or something. But is there some other thing that could be going wrong that could then cause these idler pulleys to fail?
Not really, because the idler pulley's job is, back when there wasn't such thing as idler pulleys, you would, if you over-tightened the belt, for instance, you put a big bar on the alternator and yanked up the alternator real tight so the belt was really tight, it would stress out all the bearings. That's why there was actually not that anyone ever did it, but there was a measurement on how much the belt should move, and that would tell you if it was too tight or not tight enough. The idler pulley's job is just to sit there and kind of do that, and it, most everything with an idler pulley has some sort of self-tensioner at the same time. So it would be unusual that there would be something else that's causing it. What could cause it, though, and maybe just try to make sure everything looks like it's running straight and true. In other words, there's no pulleys that are out of alignment with other pulleys. And it really doesn't take much more than, say, 1/8 of an inch if you put a straight edge against all the pulleys and you look and you go, you know what, back 8 years ago I had the alternator replaced, and when they replaced it, the pulley's just a little bit different shape than the original, or the armature's a little bit bigger and longer, and that pulley's just sticking out 1/8 of an inch more than the other pulleys. Those are the kind of things that can wear out bearings on things like idler pulleys. So maybe
the only thing that's ever been replaced in that whole area is the idler pulley that I put in.
Yeah. I mean, the other part of it, could it be, like you said, could it be an alternator that's starting to, an alternator bearing that's starting to get crunchy, that's old. Could it be that? Could be. The problem is being able to hear it and figure it out at the same time is sometimes impossible. This may be one of these things that you just have to let it get worse to figure out how to get it better.
That's what I thought I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, the minute I went in, I was like, well, that didn't fix it. I think I just replaced a perfectly good part, which I probably did. But then when the second one went, it was like, okay, so I'll go to the mechanic.
Yep.
And the problem is he replaced the same thing, and now I'm basically still hearing a noise that I haven't heard for 20 years. Now I hear it all the time. Maybe it's just my ears. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it could be you're more in tune with it, too, which could be part of the issue as well. So. I guess, this is one of these cases, time might be the best diagnostic tool. Let it just get a little bit more consistent, and you'll probably be able to find it. Okay?
And what's worst case? It really gets loud that it would snap a belt or something?
It would have to get really, really, really loud for that to happen.
Okay, so obnoxious, loud, I'm probably good.
Yeah. I think if it's just like, other than that, keep an eye on, and it's the other possibility is there's something behind the timing cover that could be making some noise, but you're not going to know that until you're able to figure out where it's coming from. So, Okay. All right.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Let's see if we can go real quick to Rusty from Arizona. Rusty?
Hey, John Paul, Happy New Year. I'm usually the guy from moving the cars. I'm out here on the Bruin season. Take a hold of the truck. I got a quick question for you. You know,
sure.
I bought that 22 Toyota Corolla. Got a problem now. The paint's falling off my car. I don't know what to do right now. I just hit the 36,000 mile mark. I bought it with 32,000 miles. I called Toyota on Tuesday. They gave me a case number. I don't think anything's going to get done with it.
Is it like literally delaminating coming right off the body?
Yeah, there's chips on the paint. I put some touch-up paint on it. It looks awful. The roof, I just saw the roof the other day. The hood. It's a known problem with the white paint Toyotas from the past, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, all you can do at this point is let Toyota be aware of it, and what they'll probably do is, and I've seen them do it before, is they'll run it through their body shop and they'll scuff it down, they'll bring it down to the primer and repaint it again.
It's just because I put the touch-up paint on there. It doesn't look too hot, but it like a sizable chunk came out New Year's Eve, and I just had to do something because it was going to, like, with the rain and everything. And, I just did temporary precautions, but then after I inspected it, it looks awful.
Yeah, I would, I would take a bunch of pictures to go along with, and if they ask, for a case number, I would go into the Toyota dealer. Yeah, I would go into the Toyota dealer and let them know you have a case number, and just the dealer's going to want to kind of put it off. But I would try to work. I would try to work directly with Toyota. The one thing I will let you know, and I don't know this is Toyota specifically, but in a lot of these car companies, the people that answer the phone at customer service are third-party contract employees, and basically they're just reading from a script all the time. So
they gave me a case number, so I just have to wait there.
Yeah, but don't accept the first answer. Is what I'm trying to say.
Listen, I never do. This is serious because I just bought this thing and it looks awful now.
Yeah. No, I would just I would just keep pushing it the best you can, and if you have to, Toyota still has third-party arbitration, so I would if I wouldn't threaten it yet, but I would be that's one of the things, and could this have been repaired somewhere along the line, at the factory or after it was shipped, and is that causing part of the problem? Probably not. It's probably just the paint itself. But again, like you said, don't take the first answer. Keep pushing it, and you'll probably get what you want. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right. Happy New Year. Yeah. Well, that music means we need to go. It's about 12 o'clock. Thank you for listening. Until next week, make sure you wear your seatbelt, drive safely, be good to your car, and if you see an emergency vehicle by the side of the road, slow down or move over. It saves lives. Bye-bye.